I said I couldn't watch their dog. For a week, I had surgery. My daughter said, "So don't bother coming for Thanksgiving." Well, if you can't even help with the dog, maybe skip Thanksgiving this year. Julia didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her tone was that familiar, clipped thing she used on service reps and restaurant hosts. Like she was still being polite. Like the sentence wasn't a punch dressed as a sentence. I was standing in my kitchen, wearing the same beige robe I'd had since George passed, trying to balance on one leg and hold the phone steady without letting the ice pack slide off my knee. 3 days post-surgery. Titanium joint, they'd said. Minimal swelling, they'd said. Liars. I winced as I shifted my weight and said carefully, "Honey, I just can't manage Harley right now. He's 100 pounds and full of muscle." My leg. "Mom?" "We already booked the cabin," Julia cut in. "Flights, rental, everything. You've watched him before." Yes, but I hadn't been cut open the week before. I said a little sharper than intended. There was a pause. I could hear her breathing steady and clipped like her voice. Then came the sentence. "So, don't bother coming for Thanksgiving. We'll send pictures." She hung up before I could answer. And I stood there in my kitchen staring at the humming refrigerator like it might explain what had just happened. My fingers were still curled around the phone. My knee throbbed. And I realized this wasn't about the dog. It never was. It had been building for years, the way I became available, not invited, not included, utilized. Every favor I ever said yes to. "Mom, can you drop the packages at FedEx, Mom? The school's doing early release again. Can Harley stay with you this weekend?" All of it was an unspoken contract. I stay useful. I stay welcome. I say no, and I become inconvenient. But this was new. This was banishment. Punishment for being in pain. For healing. For remembering that I had a body with limits. Apparently, that made me less of a mother. The next morning, I did what Julia probably expected me not to. I didn't call back. I didn't apologize. I didn't plead for my spot at the dinner table. Instead, I made myself a cup of tea, sat down with both feet up on the ottoman, and opened the little black notebook I hadn't touched in years. The one I used to write poetry in before I became everybody's helper. On the first line of the first page, I wrote, "Day 1 rejected for healing, disqualified from belonging, still here." And then I underlined it. Twice. I spent the rest of that morning in silence. Not the cozy kind, not the kind you brew tea into. The kind that settles like dust in a room no one's entered in years. The kind that makes you hear everything you've tried not to. I heard the way Julia had said, "We'll send pictures." Like I was an aunt 3 states away. Like I was someone to be informed, not included. A distant afterthought. I stared out the window. My neighbor across the street was setting up plastic pumpkins on her porch. She had 3 grandkids and a rotating gallery of art taped to her fridge. Her daughter brought soup every Sunday. I once helped that woman jump-start her car in the snow. She'd forgotten that by spring. Maybe everyone forgets. I didn't even like Harley the dog, I mean. He was part Doberman, part demon. Jumped on furniture. Knocked over plants. Once chewed through the strap of my handbag because I left a granola bar in it. But I loved Julia, and so I said yes. For years. Yes to the dog. Yes to the last-minute airport drop-offs. Yes to the volunteer shifts at Sophie's school book fair. Yes to babysitting during her yoga retreat. During her anniversary during the week. She just really needed some space. Yes until it calcified into expectation. I hadn't realized how many times I'd been told not asked. How many tasks arrived disguised as invitations. How many holidays came with a side of obligation and left with my quiet exhaustion. I thought of last Thanksgiving. I'd cooked a pie from scratch pecan. Julia's favorite, only to have it left untouched because her new trainer had her on a no-sugar cleanse. She'd told me after dinner, like it was a cute story. "You didn't have to, Mom. You didn't have to." That was her refrain. But I did. Because she never left space for not doing. I limped over to the cupboard where I kept the fall decorations. There was a box labeled Autumn Good China Gratitude Notes. Julia had made those notes a tradition back when Sophie was little. Everyone wrote one and read it aloud. It was supposed to be meaningful, but the last few years it had become a hollow ritual, like clinking glasses without feeling the toast. I opened the box, reached in, and found one of my old notes. "I'm grateful for being useful." I read it twice. Then I took a pen and scribbled a new line underneath. "I'm grateful for waking up to the difference between being useful and being valued." That night I took a long bath. I couldn't get in the tub, so I used the shower chair the nurse had left and let the water run hot over my shoulders. I cried. Not from pain, from release. From finally admitting that I had let this happen for far too long. I'd confused being selfless with being erased. And now, with one clipped sentence, Julia had handed me the gift I hadn't known how to ask for permission to opt out. I didn't need to be the mashed potatoes, the folding chairs, the dog watcher, the holiday glue. Let them send their pictures. I'd start making my own. At 2 a.m., I woke up, padded to the kitchen, and opened the freezer. There was still a pint of peppermint ice cream left from last Christmas, something Julia said was too artificial. I ate it straight from the carton, standing barefoot under the dim light, my knee aching, but my spirit steadier. Somewhere between the third spoonful and the fourth, I thought, what if this year I planned nothing for anyone else? What if I planned for me? On the back of a grocery receipt, I wrote the beginning of a list. Don't text first. Don't offer to help. Don't wait for a seat at their table. Find your own. Then I underlined the last one. Twice. They left that same afternoon. Julia, Max, Sophie the dog, all packed into their glossy black Audi Q7 with heated seats and monogrammed luggage. I watched from the window holding a mug I didn't remember heating. Harley jumped into the back seat like he'd trained for it. Julia didn't look up. They were off to Aspen Ridge Lodge, a cabin that cost more per night than my Social Security check. A place with steam showers and organic catering. A place where I would have been useful had I not dared to need recovery. They didn't take my call. They took the good throw blanket, though. The one from Restoration Hardware I gave Julia 2 Christmases ago. She never liked it. Said it was too oatmeal. Funny how suddenly it made the cut. That evening, I sat alone in the living room and looked around. Noticed the dust in corners I used to care about. The photo frames that hadn't been updated since 2014. The one of me and George in front of the Grand Canyon, back when we still made plans that didn't revolve around somebody else's calendar, back when I still believed in thank you cards. And I thought, not dramatically, just, honestly, I don't think anyone really sees me anymore. Not the real me. Not the woman who used to coordinate Shakespeare recitals for 25 restless teenagers. Not the one who once drove solo from Boston to Santa Fe Radio, blasting windows down. Not even the one who hosted holiday dinners with hand-pressed linens and name cards written in gold ink. Now I'm the one who can be summoned by text. Can you grab Sophie's clarinet from the repair place? We double-booked mind-taking Harley just for one night. One night became 3. 3 became, well, he's used to your place now. I said yes until yes became the default and no became rude. It's subtle the way usefulness morphs into obligation. At first you're appreciated, then expected, then required. I started canceling my own appointments to make theirs. Switched doctors because the new clinic was closer to Julia's route. Skipped book club because Sophie really wants her grandma to see the dance recital. I missed 3 out of 4 sessions of physical therapy for my shoulder last year because Julia's Peloton trainer changed time slots and she really needed grandma coverage. It's not a big ask, she said. You're not doing anything anyway. That one stuck. You're not doing anything anyway, as if my time existed in the margins of their life, as if nothing I planned was ever real. There's a term for it. Time theft. But when it happens to people my age, it gets sugar-coated. Oh, she loves helping. What it really is, a steady siphoning of someone's energy, autonomy, and time under the guise of family. And no one talks about it. Because to say it out loud makes you sound ungrateful, bitter, lonely. God forbid a woman in her 70s wants boundaries. It crept up slowly, the erasure. Not overnight, not all at once. Just a little here, a little there, like water wearing away stone. First, it was the spare key. Just so Sophie can let herself in after school, Julia had said. It's easier than us hiding it under the mat. But somehow, that meant I was always home. Waiting. Available. Then it was my reading chair. Moved to make room for a toddler playpen, just temporary. Then my shelves. Cleared to display Sophie's plastic trophies and framed art from kindergarten. I love her. Of course I do. But every space she grew into was one I shrank from. By last year, my home wasn't mine anymore. Julia had opinions about everything. The curtains too old-fashioned. The sofa not guest-friendly. She offered to help refresh the space, and before I knew it, my floral rugs were gone, replaced by a minimal beige monstrosity that looked like it came straight out of an Instagram home influencer's feed. It wasn't ugly. It just wasn't me. And somehow I was footing the bill. She used my own American Express to simplify things and ordered a set of $250 linen napkins because paper just felt tacky. I didn't even host dinner that year. Sometimes it's not the big betrayals that undo you. It's the slow fade. The way your name becomes a utility. The way silence replaces conversation and obligation replaces affection. I remember a night last spring. I'd made lemon chicken Sophie's favorite, and they showed up late from swim lessons. Max looked at his phone the entire meal. Julia picked at her salad and asked if I'd remembered to use gluten-free croutons. Sophie asked for the iPad. Halfway through, no one said thank you. No one asked how I was. They left by 8:30. I did the dishes by myself in silence, under the buzz of the new pendant lights Julia had installed to modernize the kitchen. I'd paid for those too. Later that night, I found myself sitting on the edge of my bed, not sad, not angry, just hollow. And I caught myself whispering something I hadn't said aloud in years. I miss being known, not needed, not tolerated, not managed. Known. I didn't blame Julia entirely. She's the product of a world that rewards convenience over connection. She grew up in a culture of hustle, of optimization. of scheduling love between Pilates and board meetings. Her Thanksgiving menu was a Pinterest board. Her empathy, a bullet point. And I had let it happen. By saying yes when I meant maybe. By staying silent when I felt dismissed. By folding my boundaries into their comfort. I opened the drawer beside my bed that night and found a card. It was from George, our 25th anniversary. You are not just the center of this home. You are its pulse. I held that card like a lifeline. Let the words seep into the places that had gone numb. He saw me. Always did. And I realized I'd spent years trading visibility for proximity. Love for access. But presence without respect isn't love. It's performance. By the time I turned off the light, something had shifted. Not enough to make a declaration, but enough to make a promise. To myself, I would stop offering pieces of me like disposable cutlery. I would stop waiting for permission to be a whole person again. In the dark, I whispered one final truth I've been shrinking to fit in their lives. Maybe it's time I step back into mine. And for the first time in months, I slept through the night. I didn't slam any doors. I just stopped unlocking them. 3 days after Thanksgiving, I took down the fall wreath from my front door. Not because the season was over, because I was done performing welcome. I wrapped it in tissue paper, placed it in the storage bin marked guests, and slid it to the back of the closet. Then I reached for the black canvas bag I hadn't touched in years, the one I used to take on writing retreats back when I still believed solitude wasn't shameful. Inside was a notebook, a scarf that still smelled faintly of lavender, and a bookmark that read, "Go where you are not tolerated, but treasured." I placed the bookmark on the nightstand. That would be my reminder. I didn't announce anything. No grand declarations. No angry voicemails. No, I've had enough texts that would be screen captured and analyzed in family group chats. I just started removing myself piece by piece. The first to go was the calendar on the fridge. Julia had emailed it every month. Color-coded, labeled school pickup, 3:15 MWF, Harley Meds, 8 a.m., daily dry cleaning drop. Thurs pick, Mom. Can you prep stuffing on 11/21? I'd printed it out dutifully, like a secretary, like a substitute. I stared at it one last time, then folded it twice, and slid it into the recycling bin. The second thing I did was cancel their recurring grocery order from my Instacart account. They'd used my login just once during a power outage. That was 10 months and $1.40 ago. The third thing, and this one made me pause, was log out of the Ring camera Julia had installed on my front door. It's for your safety, Mom. But somehow she always knew when I left, when I came back, when I was available. No more. My movements didn't require surveillance. I wasn't the nanny or the intern. The silence was immediate. Not shocked silence, just that passive corporate kind. The kind that says we noticed, but we're pretending not to. Julia didn't text. Didn't call. Didn't ask about the wreath, the camera, or the groceries. She probably assumed it was a glitch. Or menopause. That's the convenient thing about women my age. People love blaming hormones, when what we're really feeling is clarity. I made tea every morning. Not for anyone else. Just me. I drank it by the window, no rush. Let the steam rise in soft curls. Watch the neighbor's wind chimes catch the light. Let time stretch. And for the first time in years, I didn't check my phone before noon. No updates, no logistics, no quick favors disguised as casual asks. Just stillness. And it was not empty. It was sacred. It was the Wednesday after Thanksgiving when I booked the ticket. One way, to a town called Cedar Hollow, population barely $3,000, tucked somewhere between the ocean and a pine forest where phone signals were unreliable and the silence came without apology. I didn't tell anyone, just packed slowly, thoughtfully. Not like I was escaping, more like I was finally choosing. I started with the essentials, my notebook, the cardigan George bought me on our last trip together, too thick for fashion, perfect for memory, a tin of Earl Grey, a framed photo of myself at 32 Hare Wild, standing next to a tent in Montana, smiling at no one. Then I packed one good pair of boots, the kind meant for walking without destination, and a scarf, knitted by my neighbor who passed away last year. She always said, "You don't wait to wear the good things. You wear them now." I took that seriously. I left early before sunrise. The air was still the sky, unsure of what it wanted to become. I wheeled my small suitcase down the driveway. Didn't leave a note. Didn't lock the mailbox. Didn't look back. Julia's house was 3 blocks away. She wouldn't notice my absence for days. Unless, of course, the dog needed something. But I didn't feel bitter. Not anymore. Just weightless. At the train station, I sat beside a man who was about my age reading a newspaper. He nodded. I nodded back. That's the thing about older folks, we don't need small talk to recognize each other's fatigue. Just being there is enough. The train arrived late. No one complained. Everyone just adjusted. I liked that. When I arrived in Cedar Hollow, the air smelled of salt and wood smoke. The rental cottage was smaller than advertised, the walls a little crooked, the faucet loose. But the windows, oh, the windows. They opened wide to a line of tall pines, and just beyond a glimpse of gray-blue water that glittered like it remembered being wild. The land didn't care who I had been, didn't care that my daughter hadn't called, didn't care that I hadn't been introduced as mom or grandma in weeks. It just let me be. That first evening I cooked for myself. Nothing fancy, just roasted potatoes and eggs with cracked pepper and too much rosemary. I set the table for one, laid a cloth napkin, poured a glass of wine. Then I lit a candle, not for ambiance, for proof that someone was worth preparing for, even if that someone was me. Before bed, I opened the window just a crack. Let the cold in. Let the quiet in. Then I opened my notebook and wrote, Day 1, no duties, no calls, no performance. Just one woman, 72 years old, sitting in the breath of her own life. And for once, no one is watching, except the trees. I closed the book, slid under the heavy quilt, and for the first time in years, I slept without expectation, waiting in the morning. I stopped answering out of habit. I started answering only if it felt like care. The first few mornings in Cedar Hollow felt almost dishonest, like I was getting away with something. I woke without alarms, without lists, without someone else's needs trailing me into the kitchen. No one asked what time breakfast would be ready. No dog leash lay coiled by the door. The only sound was the kettle beginning to hum. I started drinking my tea while it was still hot. That may not sound radical, but for the last 15 years I'd drunk tea in sips between someone else's demands. Half cold, forgotten on counters reheated too many times until it tasted like metal and compromise. Now, it was strong, hot mine. I began walking every day. Slow at first, cautious with my cane and the crinkling brace under my jeans. Then longer, steadier. The town was modest. A post office, 2 diners, a bait shop, a bookstore that smelled like old glue and newer loneliness. No one knew my name, and for once that felt like relief. I didn't have to be Julia's mother, didn't have to smile through explanations or dodge updates I hadn't asked for. I could just nod at the grocer, pay for my soup, and leave. By the end of that first week, I'd done something I hadn't done in over a decade. I joined something. A flyer taped to the bakery window read, "Community Writers Group. No experience needed. Just words and curiosity." I showed up at the library on Tuesday afternoon, notebook in hand. There were 5 of us, a retired school principal, a widowed plumber, a shy young woman with half-blue hair and hands that shook when she read. And me. We sat in a circle, read lines about silence and frost and second chances. No one asked about my kids. No one asked who I was here with. They just listened. When it was my turn, I read a piece I'd written the night before. I used to think love looked like self-sacrifice. But maybe love looks like leaving the door open and trusting that if someone values you, they'll knock with care, not convenience. There was a pause after. Then the blue-haired girl said, "That made me feel brave." And I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Usefulness without being used. The next morning, my phone buzzed. First time all week. Julia. No message. Just her name. I didn't answer. I watched it light up, vibrate, fall, still. No voicemail. Of course not. Then an hour later, another buzz. This time from Max. "Sophie's wondering where you went. She misses you. No, how are you? No, are you okay?" Just a nudge wrapped in guilt. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then placed the phone on the windowsill beside my mug and let it ring out the second time. And the third. I didn't need to punish them. I just needed to protect myself. Because that's what boundaries are. Not walls. Just fences with clear gates. And that morning, I realized. For years, my gate had no lock. Now, I finally knew how to close it and when to open it on my terms. That afternoon, I took out a postcard from the bundle I'd bought at the library gift shelf, watercolor images of Cedar Hollow in winter. Nothing fancy. Just a snowy dock, a lighthouse in the distance. I chose one with a pine tree leaning slightly, like it had survived one too many storms and still stood anyway. I wrote, "Dear Sophie, I'm safe. I'm happy. I miss you. I'm in a small town with big trees and excellent soup. This isn't goodbye. It's just Grandma finally taking time to breathe. I hope you get to do that too, and soon. Love, Grandma." I didn't mention her parents. Didn't explain. Didn't justify. Just truth made gentle. Because some hearts, even little ones, deserve truth more than protection. I walked the card to the post office myself. Slipped it into the box. No fanfare. No need for tracking. Just release. That night, I turned off my phone before bed. Not silent mode. Off. And in the quiet that followed, I heard something I hadn't heard in years, my own thoughts uninterrupted. They weren't revolutionary, just small ones. Should I try watercolor again? Do I really like chamomile? Or have I just accepted it? What happens if I stop being available to people who never ask how I am? By the end of the week, I knew the name of the man who made soup at the market. His name was Curtis. He remembered I didn't like too much garlic. He called me ma'am without making me feel old. And when I told him I liked the mushroom bisque better than the squash, he said, "You don't have to eat what's trendy, just what's true." I wrote that down in my notebook, not just because it was about soup, because it was about everything. The small apartment above the bookstore came up for rent. The owner, a woman named Mara, mid-60s, with cropped silver hair and a smoker's laugh, said it used to be her sister's. Now it was mostly full of dust and bookshelves. I said I'd take it, month to month. No big decisions, just one key, my name on the mailbox, and a window that faced east. I moved in on a Tuesday. By Friday, I had unpacked 3 boxes. One for books, one for sweaters, one for things that made me feel like me. The last one included George's anniversary card, the bookmark from my writing bag, and a recipe for poppy seed lemon loaf that no one in my family ever liked, but I did. I baked it that weekend, shared slices with Mara and Curtis, ate the rest with my tea still hot. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. Disappointed maybe, but also free. Because here's what no one tells you about walking away. You don't have to burn the bridge. You just have to stop crossing it alone. They said, "You're welcome any time." But this time I asked myself, do I want to go? It started with a knock I wasn't expecting. A man stood outside the bookstore, polite, well-dressed, holding a small box. He introduced himself as Daniel, said he was Julia's assistant. I blinked. I hadn't realized she had one. "She asked me to drop this off," he said. Didn't want to impose. Inside the box was a card, thick, creamy stock, raised lettering. "We're hosting Christmas Eve. Sophie insisted you come. We'd love to have you. No dog duties this time, just dinner. Love, Jay." There was a line underneath written in Sophie's handwriting, crooked purple ink, "Grandma, I miss you more than marshmallows and cocoa." I sat with the box in my lap for a long time. It wasn't anger I felt. It wasn't even relief. It was something quieter, like a question wrapped in velvet. Am I ready? Do I want to go? What part of me would I have to leave behind to walk back through that door? I made tea peppermint this time and stared out the window. Snow had begun to fall. Not dramatic flurries, just soft, deliberate flakes. They reminded me of all the times I'd rushed to make holidays magical, tying bows around packages no one remembered unwrapping, staying up until 1 a.m. to set the table just right, fixing the burnt ham, the tantrum, the quiet arguments between Julia and Max. They'd always thanked me, but they never asked if I enjoyed any of it. Now here I was, in a bookstore apartment above a soup shop drinking tea that hadn't cooled yet. No lights blinking, no expectations rising like steam. Just me, alive, undemanded. And yet Sophie, that child had never once made me feel small. She hadn't seen me as a resource. She'd asked questions, real ones. What did Grandpa's voice sound like? What did you want to be when you were my age? Do you think I'll be like you when I'm older? She didn't need me to answer perfectly. She just needed me to show up as myself. I thought of the lemon loaf, of Curtis's soup, of the poems taped above my writing desk, of how it felt to say no and not feel punished for it. I thought of Julia's card, how it said, "We'd love to have you," but not once asked. "How have you been?" I picked up my pen, reached for a blank postcard, and wrote, "Dear Sophie, thank you for your beautiful note. You made my heart warmer than any cocoa ever could. I'm not sure I'll make it back for Christmas Eve, but know that I carry you with me every day. Love, Grandma. I signed it in blue ink. No explanations. No justifications. Just love offered freely without self-erasure. I didn't go back for Christmas Eve. I didn't buy a train ticket. Didn't pack a suitcase. Didn't text Julia. I lit a candle in my own window. Hung a single ornament on a fir branch I'd found on my morning walk. Made mushroom bisque with extra thyme. Watched It's a Wonderful Life in fuzzy socks. And when the movie ended, I didn't feel sad. I felt full of myself, of this new life I hadn't known how badly I needed. Sophie wrote again, a real letter this time. Hi, Grandma. I got your postcard. Mom was mad you didn't come, but I wasn't. I just wanted to know you were okay. Are you okay? I smiled. Tucked the letter into the drawer with my bookmarks and poems. Maybe one day I'd write her back with everything about love that doesn't ask us to shrink, about how being needed and being loved aren't always the same, about how sometimes the best way to come home is to build a new one. But for now, I just wrote this, yes, Sophie, I am more than okay. I'm becoming. Spring came slowly in Cedar Hollow, first with the moss brightening, then with the sound of frogs waking up behind the bookstore. Curtis invited me to teach a suit-making class at the community center. Mara asked if I wanted to co-host poetry night once a month. I said yes, not out of obligation. But because now I understood, when your yes is free, it means something again. And as for Julia, she didn't call again, but on Mother's Day, a package arrived. No note, just a single photo frame. Inside it, a picture of me and Sophie, from years ago when I'd taken her to the botanical gardens. We were both laughing. I didn't remember the photographer, but I remembered the moment. I placed it on my windowsill, next to the candle, not as a doorway back, but as a memory I chose to keep. So no, I didn't go back. I went forward, into rooms where I wasn't expected to serve, into friendships that didn't depend on usefulness, into days that began and ended with my name spoken kindly by myself. If you're listening to this, and you've ever felt like the help at your own family table, if you've ever confused being essential with being seen, if you've ever wondered what might happen if you said no and meant it, I hope you find your own Cedar Hollow, even if it's just a quiet corner of your life that belongs to you again, because it's never too late to return to yourself. Not ever. Thank you for listening. If this story stirred something in you, take a breath, hold it, and ask, what's one thing I can reclaim today just for me? If this story spoke to you, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your voice. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this from one heart to another.